So today I got about 100 questions about the topic soul ties. What is it? How do you get one? How do you overcome one? I mean, the list goes on, but let me just start with the first one. What exactly is a soul tie?
A soul tie is exactly what it sounds like, but it's been misrepresented, misunderstood, and miscommunicated by a lot of people. A soul tie has to deal with the soul.
Yeah.
Not the flesh, not the spirit, but the soul. And the tie is that which binds you together. So a soul tie is whenever your mind, your will, your emotions, your intellect is tied to another person.
Yeah.
That's what a true soul tie is.
Okay. So can you get a soul tie by having sex?
Absolutely.
How so?
All right, this is the challenge. Now, this is when you go to like the Urban Dictionary and you ask, what is a soul tie? They're going to tell you something along these lines, that it is a tethering together of two individuals through intimacy or sexual activity, something along those lines. Now, you can get a soul tie because you had sex with somebody, but you're not guaranteed to have a soul tie because you had sex with somebody.
Yeah.
Now, even in the church, a lot of people preach this. A lot of youth pastors use scare tactics to try to prevent young people from engaging in sexual intercourse outside of marriage. I remember being in young person, hearing youth pastors preach and stuff, and they would give all sorts of horror stories. They would tell you how bad it is, how rough this is going to be, how disgusting, how damaging, how disease-ridden sex is. And they would say it's horrible. Don't do it. This is going to ruin your life.
Yeah.
Wait till you get married and then give all that to your wife.
Yeah.
And it's confusing because you think, my goodness, you just told me how bad sex is. Save that for your marriage. It didn't make sense.
No,
right?
yeah.
All right, so there's a lot of misconceptions about soul ties, about sex, but one of the biggest ones is that anytime you have sex, you're somehow being parabonded or tied to this other person because of intercourse. But it doesn't happen. What happens is if you have intercourse and your emotions get tied to that person, now you have a soul tie. You don't have a flesh tie with them.
Yeah, right.
If that's the case, think about it this way. If flesh with flesh causes a soul tie, don't shake hands with anybody.
That's true.
Don't hug anybody.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
Don't let your flesh come in contact with anybody. If flesh to flesh causes that tie, be careful. But that's not what it's saying. Soul ties is in the mind, the will, the emotions, the intellect, the thought process. That's what soul tie is.
Well, some people may say, well, sex is different because it's intimate. It's a different feeling. It's you're opening yourself up to another person. So are you a lot more vulnerable to have a soul tie with that person when you have intercourse with them? You
are. You really are. And you said it in your question, in your statement.
Yeah.
You're opening yourself up to them, right? Now, you're not just opening yourself up physically to them, though that's happening, right? But you can open yourself up in a lot of ways outside of sexual intercourse. But let's just take sexual intercourse. You're opening yourself up to them, but what happens is in that moment of sex and intercourse, when that pleasure button is pushed, your mind, your emotions, your intellect, your thoughts, your will, all of that culminates in that moment of pleasure, and you grab hold of it.
Yeah.
Now, when that happens, you're not just thinking about this sex feels good. That is what you're thinking if you're having a good experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's just be real. Okay, don't get all religious on me and think it's not supposed to happen. Be realistic and say this does happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not saying it's supposed to outside of marriage. I'm not preaching that. I'm not condoning that. I'm not promoting that. But I am talking to you about reality.
Yeah.
And these things happen. And so what we're talking about is can a soul tie happen through sex? And yes, it can, especially if it's good sex.
Right.
Because you'll start to desire the pleasure. And once you move past the reality that this is pleasurable, you begin to think this person is producing the pleasure.
Yeah.
Not just a person.
Mm-hmm.
This person is doing it. When that happens, you begin to think the only place to get that pleasure is with that person. And so you begin to tie yourself in your emotions to them. They have made you feel good. They have made you feel pleasure. They have made you feel loved, seen, accepted, welcomed, whatever it may be, whatever the good thing is. You are contributing that good pleasure to that one person. And now your emotions are tied to them. But it's also possible that, let's just be real, people just hook up. Yeah. People just have sex. People just, and they take the pleasure, but they do it selfishly. Mm-hmm. And they say, well, this person is the tool in which I'm receiving pleasure, but they're like many other people. And so they become promiscuous, and they're never tied to anyone. Yeah. And so you'll see people who can go have sex with a lot of people, and they have no emotions with it, no emotional tie with that.
Right.
And that's why, let's be real here, that's why men typically are able to have, notice I said typically, so don't get mad at me, everyone out there that says, oh, that's not me, I don't do that. Okay, you're the exception to the rule, but listen, most men can have intercourse with a woman and not be emotionally tied to her. Yeah. You don't even have to tell us your real name. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because why? They're after pleasure for themselves. Mm-hmm. Right? And when that happens, there's no soulish emotional tie to the woman. Typically, a woman will have intercourse, but she is seeking after the emotions that are tied to it. So there's a little bit of a difference. We can talk about it if you want. Yeah. Dive into it.
And that makes perfect sense, but I just want to get real quick for a minute. Does good or bad sex determine whether you have a soul tie or not?
Yeah, it does. Again, because if it's good sex, it produces pleasure. Right. And once you have experienced pleasure, you're going to want it again. And when you say, okay, I want it again, you have to say, what was the source of that pleasure? And you're going to take it beyond the actual member that's producing the pleasure or the actual physical contact. You're going to say, who is that? Mm-hmm. And so you're going to begin to say, this person is producing good sex, which is producing good pleasure in my life, and I'm tying to it. They mean something to me. Yeah. And so what happens oftentimes is good sex equates into good partnership. Yeah, yeah. And so you get tied to them in your emotions because you think, this is working, this is good. Mm-hmm. Even if everything else in that relationship is not good. Yeah. Even if they're outside of the bedroom, they're a jerk or they're a nag or whatever word you want to put in there. Outside the bedroom, you say, this isn't working. But then you go back and say, but there is this one part that really works. And so what happens? You get tied to the pleasure molecule. You get tied to that part and say, that's what I'm after. Yeah. And it's hard to break. It's hard to get away from. It's hard to get out of your mind.
Yeah. How do you break it? Say that's something that is in your mind, and how do you break something like that?
Man, okay. That's a tough question. Mm-hmm. All right. That needs to be a podcast by itself, actually. But let me make it as simple as possible. If you're in a position where you need to break a soul tie, you cannot think of it in a pleasurable way. Mm. You're going to have to think of it in a negative way. Yeah. Okay. Can I give you an example? Yeah. And let's just take it as an example. Mm-hmm. Let's say a man is tied to a woman with a soul tie. His emotions are tied to her because of what is experienced through the sexual intercourse. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, this is a completely bad situation. Mm-hmm. And he's like, man, I've got to get free of this. I've got to get away from this. And she is not tied to him. Yeah. And she's got 4 other men just like him. Yeah. right? And you think, oh, but this is the one. If she'll just settle down, if she'll just calm down, if she'll stop being promiscuous, if she sees how much I love her, how much I want her, how much I need her, how much I desire her, and he's pursuing her, but she's being pursued by 4 other guys.
Yeah.
At some point, he needs to realize, listen, this is a bad situation for many reasons.
Yeah.
For many reasons, this is a bad situation. He said, well, how am I going to break this? Because, man, I can't get past it. Here's what you got to do. You're going to have to start thinking everything that you are thinking about her, you and her, she is doing with 4 other men like you. Yeah. It's going to hurt. Mm-hmm. It's going to hurt. But you don't dissolve a soul tie easily. No. Whether it's through sex, whether through something else. Soul ties do not dissolve easily. You have to reverse the whole purpose of the tie. The tie is through pleasure. The tie is through I want it to be there, or I'm used to it, or this is what I crave. You're going to have to talk yourself out of it, right? Okay? You're going to have to say, man, listen, the very thing that I want, the very thing that I'm hooked on to is not hooked on to me. Yeah. And her character is not to be loyal. Her character is to run me and a couple others, and then see which one shakes out. You know, oftentimes people will have their number one pick. This is the guy that I want to marry. This is the one I hope picks me. This is what I hope works out. I'm investing in that. But the whole time they got someone else on the back burner that they don't know about. And they're like, well, if plan A fails, then I guess I'll go to plan B. If plan B fails, then I'll go to C. I know people like this. I know women who are like that. And they've got 3 guys, and they're just waiting to see who steps up and takes them. 3 guys don't even know about each other. And so they're trying to figure out, they're in love with this woman, but they can't figure out why they can't cross that line and move forward with them. It's because they're soulishly tied to her through emotions, but she's not really tied to them. She's tethered a little bit, but she's tied to 3 other guys. Yeah. You're never going to get him. You know? And so you've got to realize that it's through the emotions. The soul tie is in the emotions. It's coming up out of the physical, but the actual tie is in the emotions. So you're going to have to change your emotions. You're going to see things differently if you're going to break it.
That makes sense. Is sex the only way that you can get a soul tie?
No, it's not. You can be soul tied to people you've never had sex with. You can be soulishly tied to somebody you have never physically met in person.
How is that?
One of the first examples that comes to my mind is, I'm going to be dating myself a little bit. But when I was growing up, Michael Jackson was the king of pop. Yeah. Right? I mean, everybody knew who Michael Jackson is, and most people still do. I don't know, you're a younger man, so you might not even know who I'm talking about, but hopefully you do. Yes. But when I was growing up, Michael Jackson was the king of pop, and during his concerts, the news media would show all of these people in the concert, and there was always these young girls who would just break down in hysterical tears and cry and pass out because they got close to Michael Jackson. They would go to their homes and show their rooms, and their rooms were filled with posters and memorabilia and all sorts of things about Michael Jackson. They knew his favorite color. They knew what food he liked. They knew how old he was, where he was born. They knew everything about him. They were obsessed with him. Yeah. And he did not even know they existed. Yeah. They were emotionally tied to Michael Jackson, even though Michael Jackson didn't know who they were. Right? Yeah. And so you can have a soulish tie to someone you've never even met because you're emotionally connected to them. We've seen people who have had emotional ties, again, going back to when I was growing up. Yeah. They used to have, I don't even know if they still have this stuff anymore. They used to have what they used to call soap operas, daytime TV, right? The Young and the Restless, All My Children, General Hospital. Yeah. And people would be so enraptured with those shows that they thought those actors were really those people.
Yeah.
Right? The show Dallas, whatever, when, what was it, JR? He got shot or something like that. Man, the whole world went crazy. Who killed JR? So people get emotionally moved, even though they do not know that person. One last one. You're going to like this one.
Mm-hmm.
There's people who are emotionally tied to Donald Trump, and they hate him. See, not all soulish ties have to be positive or good. There's a whole group of people who absolutely hate Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And their souls are tied to him. Everything he says, everything they follow, they move with him, they hear every word, they're vehemently against him, and their souls are tied to him. Yeah. But it's a negative soul tie. Yeah. There's no pleasure, but it's the opposite. It's full of hate.
So then there's different types of soul ties.
Absolutely.
Is it just those two, good and bad? How would you explain that?
Well, if you were to say, two categories, I say, yeah, it's either good or bad.
Yeah.
Now, those are the ends of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
There's obsession, and that could be either obsessively hating or obsessively loving.
Okay.
Right? There's love, there's hate, there's casual, and there's, So if we were to put them into two categories, we say, yeah, there's good and there's bad. But you also have to say in those categories, let's just make subcategories. There's sexual soul ties, pleasurable. There's vehement anger and wrath and hate and all of that, for someone you don't like. But let's take it out of those two and say, can you be soul tied to your grandmother?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You can be soul tied to someone you love outside of sex.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of a sexual relationship or a political relationship, you can be soul tied to your family, to your children. I'm tied to my children.
Yeah.
My soul is tied in a knot over those kids, all four of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so my mind is on them. My will is for them. My emotions are baptized in them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so I am soulishly tied to my family, my children.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with sex, obviously.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with hatred.
Yeah.
Obviously. And so there's just different types of it. So, yeah, remember a soul tie is your emotions, your will, your intellect, your thoughts being tethered and securely fastened to somebody.
Mm-hmm. So would you say a soul tie is just you have emotions for a person, good or bad?
Yeah.
That's just simply what a soul tie is?
It's simple.
Well, can you have a soul tie with a bro?
With a bro?
Yeah.
Absolutely, you can. Think about this. Go to soldiers who are, fighting in wars in our military and things. You'll hear phrases like this.
Mm-hmm.
They go to war and they say, we're not fighting for, this political cause.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fighting for my brother standing next to me.
Yeah.
Willing to die for their brother.
Yeah.
Right? Willing to take a bullet. Willing to throw themselves in harm's way upon a grenade to save the men, the brothers, the bros that they love.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Their emotions are, I will die for this man.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the strongest love you're ever going to find is between bros.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Listen, ladies, I'm sorry to tell you, your bestie, the love you have for her, man, it doesn't even compare to the love bros have for bros. It doesn't.
I agree.
Y'all gonna get frustrated. Say, oh yeah. No, cross your little girlfriend over there. Tell her she looks fat and see how long you'll stay friends. You can tell her, bro, the worst thing ever about him.
Yeah.
And he'll be like, dude, that hurt. You'll be like, well, it's true. He's like, well, I appreciate you saying it.
Yeah, right.
And then you're gonna go get barbecue.
Yeah.
Right? So the love that men have for men, and that's a non-sexual. Amen.
Yeah.
I'm looking for an amen, brother.
Amen.
All
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
That non-sexual love, that is that deeper love. But it's still a soul tie. It's still a soul connection.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I've got a best friend that I grew up with, and he lives out in Stillwater area. And, man, we were brothers growing up. Yeah. Blood brothers. Back when we didn't know any better. I mean, we did what the old Westerns did. We cut our hands, and we shook hands.
Oh, yeah.
Man, we mingled the blood and said, we are now blood brothers.
Yeah.
Right? And, Man, I've probably seen that cat. That cat I've probably seen once in the last 20 years.
That's crazy.
But man, I see him on Facebook and stuff all the time, and following him and his wife and kids and stuff. And I love that guy. If he walked in this studio right now, man, we'd stop the podcast. I'd stand up and hug him, and man, no loss of time.
Yeah.
No loss of time.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can have a soul tie with your bro.
That's awesome. So what does a truly good soul tie look like? If you were to give an example, what would you say?
A truly good soul tie is based on the emotion of true love.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are 4 types of love.
Mm-hmm.
So the soul tie, a good soul tie, is going to have a foundation in one or more of these 4 types of love.
Okay.
The first one is agape, the God kind of love.
Yeah.
The second is romantic love.
Mm-hmm.
That's between a man and a woman.
Yeah.
Passionate love includes sex.
Mm-hmm.
The third one is parental love, the love that a parent has for their child.
Yeah.
And then the fourth is Philadelphia, brotherly love.
Yeah.
To have a good soul tie, it's going to have a foundation in one of those, right? So the bros, you got to have brotherly love.
Yeah.
Right? If it crosses over to romantic love, he's not your bro. There's something going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So each one of those 4 types of love can grow a good soul tie.
Yeah.
If it's not in one of those, then it's not going to end up being a good soul tie.
Yeah.
So cultivate it, water it, grow it, watch what happens. Soul ties can be good if they're grown correctly.
Okay, now what would you say a bad soul tie looks like?
A bad soul tie. Listen, this is where we really fall into it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where a lot of people find themselves.
Yeah.
And this is where broken hearts are. This is where people who can't move on from situations find themselves. Let's start with relationships. Let's start with sexual relationships, romantic relationships.
Yeah.
Okay. A bad soul tie is when you are tied to someone that is not beneficial or good for you.
Mm.
And you can do that. You can be tied to someone who's not good for you because of pleasure.
Yeah.
But it's not the only way. Because you wouldn't say, well, I mean, I'm tied to this guy, but the sex wasn't that great, but I still feel connected to him.
Yeah.
Because a lot of ladies may say, hey, sex is just sex. To them, it's not priority number one like it is for a man. And just an insert here. Listen to me, ladies. Sex is priority number one for a man.
Yeah.
There are a couple things that you need to know. A man's will to live, a man's will to eat, and a man's will to procreate. And those 3 shift.
Yeah.
From time to time.
Yeah.
You say, well, wouldn't his will to stay alive be the number one? Depends on how hot the grill is.
Yeah, right now my number one will is to eat, for sure.
Yeah.
Over sex, over to live, everything.
Something wrong with you, brother.
I'm hungry.
Yeah. Well, it is about lunchtime here. But think about this. If your wife said to you, I know you're hungry, but if you come home, I'll feed you. Would you say, nah, I'm going to go grab a burger, or would you go home?
Yeah, I'll drive 80 in a 20.
80 and a 20. Exactly. So if the promise of sex was offered to you, your appetite for food would diminish immediately.
Yeah.
You would choose sex over food.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's times, man, men choose sex over their own lives. There are men who will have sex with married women at the peril of death. The Bible talks about it. Mm-hmm. Talks about it in Proverbs and says, man, that a man, it's not wise for you to go into your neighbor's wife. It says you'll do that and you won't even realize what's going on until an arrow strikes your liver.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Where we live here in Oklahoma, in this city, there's a maximum security prison a few miles from here. Death row, they execute inmates, the whole 9 yards. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of men who are out there who are in that prison because of some sexual act, whether they're caught their wives cheating, killed a man, something, or defended their own lives, whatever it is. So there's a time, man, when men will choose sex even over their own lives. A lot of the wars we fight are over stuff like this, especially back in antiquity, and go back in history. You're going to find that there's a lot of things that happen. Okay, so the top three, the will to live, the will to have sex, the will to eat, those three will compete with each other. Yeah. Okay, so it's important. Yeah. It's important for a man.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but to a woman, it's not always that important, which is one of the reasons there's a lot of arguing and fighting and schisms within the relationship.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand the importance. Okay. And so when a woman doesn't feel the same way about it or whatever, her soulish ties may come from a different source than intimacy through sex. It may come through intimacy through care.
Yeah.
He listens to me. He sends me flowers. Yeah. He's attentive, things like that. He's giving of himself to her, which is affecting her emotions, causing her to tie herself to him.
Yeah.
Well, for a man, he looks and says, the woman through sex is giving herself to me.
Makes sense.
I don't want flowers.
Yeah. I'm good.
You don't even have to cook. That's great, but I can go through the drive-through, right? What's the one thing I can't go buy legally in the state of Oklahoma? You got to go to Las Vegas or something like that, somewhere for that.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't buy sex legally. So the woman is able to provide sex, so she is giving of herself, giving, not exchanging, giving of herself to the man, and he ties himself to her that way. Well, the man is giving of himself through sacrificing different things for her, being attentive, caring for her, providing, protecting, being attentive, all those things that he normally wouldn't do if he didn't care about you. But he is doing that on your behalf, doing that for you.
Yeah.
And then she, through emotions, ties herself. She says, I love this man, not because of the bedroom, but because of what he did in the bathroom.
Yeah.
He fixed the leaky sink, something like that.
Yeah.
So those soul ties happen through your emotions.
Okay. So if you were to give a complete, clear example, like, I don't know, just kind of paint a scenario or a picture on what a bad soul tie would look like.
A bad soul tie. All right, let me just give an example because there's several ways to look at this.
Okay.
A bad soul tie is going to be, again, a person tying themselves to another person through emotions.
Right.
Now, here is what we would say a bad soul tie, another name for them would be, that you're going to be very familiar with. Trauma bond. A trauma bond. Now, and there's a couple of ways to look at a trauma bond too, but these are the cultural words that people are familiar with. Remember, you're tying yourself to somebody through emotions. It's not always a good emotion. You can have a negative emotion, a bad emotion.
Yeah.
Let's do it this way. Let's say you're afraid of being alone. Let's say a woman is afraid of being alone in the world. Not that don't get mad at me and say, women don't need men, whatever. I don't care. You do. We need you. You need us, period. Move on. Okay? But if a woman says, I'm afraid of actual reality, life without a protector, a provider, a father, someone in the house. I don't want to be alone. Well, she's going to tie herself to any little emotion that justifies keeping that man there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Even if he comes home drunk and he's abusive and he's neglectful, he's arrogant, whatever it may be, she will find something about him that gives her the right to tie herself to him, to keep him. This is a bad soul tie. I'll put up with all this negative because I would rather put up with the negative than to move forward and be alone.
That's toxic.
It's toxic. It's very toxic. And the reason that happens on both sides, both sides, men have this too.
Yeah, yeah.
Men, there's a lot of men that I counsel with and talk to and deal with on a weekly basis that hate being married. They're in a miserable existence, but they're afraid of divorcing, not because they're going to be single. That's their dream. Don't laugh.
Sorry.
It is true, though. It is true. Now, women, you're never going to hear that from a man. They're not going to reveal the bro secrets to you.
Yeah.
They're not. They're going to be like, nah. How's your wife? She's doing good. Happy, whatever, right? But you get around other men, and you can see it in their eyes. And you'd be like, man, how's it going? He's like, man, it's good. I said, wish you were single? He'll go. And you know what he meant.
Yeah.
He'll just grin.
Yeah.
And he just said, yeah. Right. Okay. So there's a lot of men and women who are in relationships that are negative, toxic, bad.
Yeah.
But they're tied to that individual because of an emotion that says it's better to be dealing with this problem than this problem.
Yeah.
And so there's women who will not leave because they're afraid of not making it on their own for whatever reason. You know, being a single mother or having to enter the dating world again and deal with all the stuff that's out there.
Yeah.
Men are in that. They're in a marriage they don't want to be in. They would rather be single even if they couldn't date.
Yeah.
Listen to me, ladies. I'm telling you the truth. I know I'm a man. I know you're going to shut me down and say, oh, that's just a man's point of view. He's wrong. Listen, this is just the experience. And it's not saying that all men are right and all women are wrong. I'm saying this happens on both sides.
Yeah.
But we know there's women who are in toxic relationships. Men accept that. We say they would do better away. But women generally won't give us that same grace. But there are men who are in relationships or marriages they don't want to be in, but they won't exit it, not because they're emotionally tied to the person, but they're emotionally tied to the provisions.
Yeah.
And they know they're going to lose half their stuff, and they're going to lose their kids for the most part, and they're going to be this and they're going to be that. And so they stay in it, and they have to find some emotional thing to tie themselves to.
Yeah.
They say, well, it could be worse. You'll hear that. Men will say, well, things could be worse. What are they doing? They're saying, let me find one or two little things to tie my emotions to that will justify me staying. That's a negative or bad soul tie. Because you're tying yourself to a burning house.
Yeah.
You handcuffed yourself to the steering wheel of a car that's in the river. Those are bad soul ties.
Yeah.
And it happens on both sides. So, yeah, bad soul ties, they exist.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something you said earlier concerning Michael Jackson. Is it possible to have a one-sided soul tie?
It is. It is possible. The reason that a lot of people were tied to Michael Jackson, Elvis Presley, JFK, LeBron James, all of these different people who are in the public view, the one-sided soul tie is when one person is emotionally invested and tied to someone, who is not reciprocating that, whether they don't know about them or they just don't feel that way about them.
Yeah.
You know, in a lot of relationships, we see that. We see people who one person is doing the heavy lifting, giving the majority of it, and the other person's disconnected, not really present. A lot of marriages are this way. You know, but if you were to go and say, let's take it out of the immediate marriage or relationship, let's take it to the far regions of understanding and say, how is it that these people have a soul tie to someone who doesn't even know they exist?
Yeah.
This right here will show you the foundation of how soul ties are formed. If someone had a soul tie towards Michael Jackson and Michael Jackson had no idea they existed, how in the world did that happen? Number one, they began to fill their mind with that other person. They thought about him all the time. They purchased his music. They heard his voice. They put his picture on the wall. They built shrines to him in their bedrooms, and they just sat there and emotionally, intellectually thought about him continually.
Yeah.
And what is happening? They are, in fact, tying themselves to him, though he has no part in it. He's out there being who he is, and people are coming along and associating with them, you know? And you see that with public figures.
Yeah.
Because public figures can't know everybody who's watching them.
Yeah.
People in leadership don't know all of that. But you're not going to have a soul tie to someone you've not invested your soul in. That's why sex doesn't produce soul ties. What sex produces is a physical tie for a time.
Yeah.
And it can produce a legal tie.
Yeah.
Right? You go have sex with a woman, get her pregnant. Guess what, buddy?
Kiddo.
You are tied to her. You're tied to this situation, even if you don't even know her name. Or where her family came from, anything like that. Well, you're going to be legally tied to her now, right?
Yeah.
You may never emotionally ascend to a place where you say, okay, I care about this person.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But soul ties can happen whenever you are investing your energy of emotions into them.
All right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that happens. It can happen in many forms. It can happen in religion. It can happen in your faith walk, right? I mean, I'm soul tied to Jesus.
Absolutely.
I mean, with both hands and feet tied to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think about him all the time. I talk to him all the time. Now, have I been to heaven and seen him? No.
Nope.
Not yet. Not yet. But my soul is tied to him.
Yeah.
Where he is, I want to be.
Absolutely.
What he wants is what I want. Right? When I read about what he went through, I tear up. I cry. If I watch The Passion of the Christ, Mel Gibson's movie, it tears my heart out. And that's an actor. Did a very good job. I know I'm watching a movie.
Yeah.
I know that's not really Jesus on the TV.
Yeah.
But in my heart, I'm actually picturing and thinking about what my Lord has gone through and what he did and what he felt. And I feel it in my soul. Right? Now, people who were tied to these people like Michael Jackson, they invested their energy of emotions into him. And they themselves tied there. And so you can do that. You can do it to somebody who doesn't invest it back. That's why you can be in a marriage and have a one-way soul tie. The wife can be tied to the man and the man not be tied to the woman, and vice versa.
So you have to invest in your feelings toward a person in order to get a soul tie.
Yeah.
But if you never make the investment, then you don't have to worry about getting a soul tie, basically. Is that true or not true?
It is true. And I'm pausing just because you're tapping into what I would call a defense mechanism for those who have become aware of the dangers of soul ties. This is why men and women, I typically go to men on this side because we're less emotional and we're more protective.
Yeah.
Because not only are we less emotional for ourselves, we're more logical in our thoughts, but we're protectors. But not only do we protect the women we love, we protect ourselves. And so what you're tapping into or touching right there is a defense mechanism where we have people realized if I don't invest emotionally, I cannot be hurt.
Right.
And so I'll go for the pleasure, I'll go for the fun, I'll go for the companionship, but I'm not going to invest my emotions that I get tied to you to where I can be hurt by you.
Dang, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So let's say you have a really bad soul tie with someone and it's imprisoning you, it's hurting you, and you're tired of it. How do you get rid of a bad soul tie like that?
To get rid of a bad soul tie is going to take work. It took work to get into it. It's going to take work to get out of it. And to get a bad soul tie broken in your life, you're going to have to do some very difficult things.
Yeah.
You're going to have to face some very, very difficult topics and embrace some very difficult answers. And I want to talk to you that on part 2 of this podcast.